Ethan drives home earlier than planned, the late afternoon light slanting through the windshield, painting the road gold. A cancelled client meeting has given him a rare gift: time. His hands are relaxed on the steering wheel, his mind busy with a simple, hopeful plan. He stopped at a bakery, a place Laura once loved, and the box on the passenger seat feels like proof that small surprises still matter. In his chest, there's a quiet pride in being dependable, in being the man who shows up. As he turns onto their street, he notices nothing wrong, no warning signs, no sense of danger. Just the familiar house waiting for him. But as he parks, sound leaks through the walls, laughter too loud, glasses clinking with careless joy. It doesn't match the hour or the life he believes is living. Something inside him tightens, not fear yet, confusion. Hope hasn't died, but it hesitates. Ethan reaches the front door and stops, not because he wants to listen, but because Laura's voice floats clearly through the wood. It's playful, careless, intimate in a way it hasn't been with him for months. Then his name drops into the conversation like a blade. Laura laughs as she tells Melissa how easy he is, how stability is useful even when it's boring. Melissa laughs louder, mocking the loyalty Ethan thought was love. The words stack up, each one heavier than the last. Laura talks about being careful with her affair, about managing Ethan like a responsibility, not a partner. Then she shares something private, something Ethan confessed on a night he was breaking, twisting it into a joke. His wedding ring presses into his finger like it's shrinking. His breathing turns shallow. The world narrows to that door, those voices, that moment where love turns into humiliation. Ethan doesn't knock. He doesn't interrupt or demand explanations. Instead, he steps backward, each movement careful, as if sound itself might shatter him. The night air feels colder than it should, biting his lungs as he retreats to the driveway. Inside the house, laughter continues, unaware, untouched. He sits in his car and closes the door, and that's when his hands start shaking. The bakery box tilts on the seat, forgotten. His reflection in the windshield looks unfamiliar, older, smaller, emptied. He presses his forehead to the steering wheel, fighting the urge to scream, to vomit, to disappear. It hits him slowly and then all at once. The marriage he's been protecting, sacrificing for, believing in, it never existed the way he thought. He wasn't building a life. He was guarding an illusion. The engine stays off. The house glows behind him. And Ethan finally understands. This is the end of who he thought he was. Ethan's numbness in the present is stitched together by memories he can't shut off. Sitting alone in his car, his mind drifts back to childhood, to slammed doors, whispered arguments, and the night his parents' marriage finally collapsed. He remembers standing in the hallway, small fists clenched, listening to his mother cry while his father packed a bag without looking back. That chaos carved a vow into him early: I will never be that man. Love, to Ethan, became something you protected at all costs. When he met Laura years later, she felt like proof that his promise had worked. She was warm, ambitious, and openly admiring of his steadiness. She called him her safe place, and he wore that title like armor. In those early days, he believed love meant consistency, patience, and sacrifice. What he didn't realize was that he was building his entire identity around never being abandoned, and never abandoning anyone else. The memories shift to the middle years of the marriage, where the change was slow enough to feel normal. Laura's admiration turned into criticism disguised as honesty. She said she was just being real, pointing out his flaws, his caution, his lack of ambition. Ethan absorbed it all, convinced love meant adapting. He passed on promotions that required travel, took safer roles to keep evenings free, and poured his savings into Laura's dreams, her courses, her business ideas, her image of a bigger future. When their daughter Claire was born, Ethan became the emotional anchor of the household, the one who noticed moods, soothed fears, stayed up through fevers and nightmares. Laura drifted, emotionally and physically, while Ethan compensated by giving more. He told himself this was partnership. He told himself marriages go through phases. What he didn't see was that his sacrifices weren't strengthening the bond. They were slowly making him invisible. In the present, the smallest details now feel loaded with meaning. Laura's late work nights. Her phone always face down. The way Melissa started showing up more often, filling the house with laughter that didn't include Ethan. Melissa's influence was subtle but corrosive. Little jokes about Ethan being too nice, comments about how Laura deserved more excitement. Over time, those words reshaped how Laura looked at her own life. And Ethan, blind in his loyalty, never questioned it. Being the good husband wasn't just a role, it was who he was. His self-worth, his masculinity, his sense of purpose all lived inside that identity. Sitting in his car now, he realizes the true stakes. Losing Laura doesn't just mean losing a marriage. It means losing the story he's told himself since childhood, that if you love hard enough, stay loyal enough, sacrifice enough, you can earn permanence. And without that belief, Ethan doesn't yet know who he is. Ethan returns home hours later, moving through the front door like a guest in his own life. Laura greets him with a smile that feels rehearsed, her arms wrapping around him with sudden affection that sets his nerves on edge. She asks about his day, touches his chest, kisses him longer than usual, as if intimacy can overwrite what he heard earlier. Now, every detail sharpens instead of blurring. He notices how easily she lies about Melissa leaving early, how smoothly she explains the empty wine bottles. These are lies he's heard before, patterns he once excused as harmless omissions. Tonight, they clang loudly in his head. Ethan plays his part, nodding, responding on autopilot, while his body stays tense. This isn't shock anymore, it's awareness. He understands something fundamental has shifted. The house hasn't changed, but he has. And for the first time, he isn't desperate to fix the moment. He's watching it, cataloguing it, letting the truth settle into place. Later that night, the confirmation arrives quietly, almost by accident. Ethan sits on the edge of the bed scrolling aimlessly when a message preview lights up on the synced tablet beside him. A name he doesn't recognize. A heart emoji. A line that leaves no room for doubt. His pulse spikes, but he doesn't react. He doesn't wake Laura. He doesn't throw the device or demand answers. Instead, he screenshots the message, saves the date, the time, the contact photo. He checks the cloud sync and sees a trail. Missed calls, deleted texts, calendar gaps that now make sense. Each discovery hurts, but it also steadies him. Emotion gives way to focus. This isn't denial, it's control. Ethan realizes something critical in that moment. If he confronts her now, everything disappears. Evidence, leverage, stability. So he becomes quiet. He observes. He documents. And he begins to think not like a husband, but like someone who needs to survive what's coming. The next day, Ethan sits across from Daniel, a family lawyer whose office smells like old books and coffee. He doesn't talk about revenge. He asks about reality. Daniel explains custody laws, financial exposure, how truth alone doesn't protect fathers who act too soon. Ethan listens carefully, absorbing every word. By the time he leaves, his path is clear. Patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. That night, Ethan lies beside Laura, staring at the ceiling as she scrolls on a phone. He can feel the faint movements of her thumbs, the subtle tilt of the screen away from him. His own phone buzzes once, her text tone, but the message isn't for him. Laura smiles softly, types, and turns closer to Ethan, resting her head on his chest. On her screen, the name reads Noah. Ethan doesn't move. Inside, something final clicks into place. The marriage is over. The plan has begun. Ethan doesn't turn cold. He turns watchful. He still shows up for dinners, still helps Claire with homework, still answers Laura's questions, but something essential has withdrawn. His warmth no longer flows automatically. Laura feels it almost immediately. She asks what's wrong, then accuses him of imagining things when he hesitates. Her defensiveness sharpens, her words twisting reality in small, cutting ways. She tells him he's always been distant, that his memory of closeness is exaggerated. Melissa's presence increases, her advice slipping into Laura's ear like poison. Lock things down. Don't let him control the narrative. Laura starts leaning on Claire emotionally, framing Ethan as distracted, unreliable, someone who doesn't listen anymore. Ethan notices the shift in his daughter's behavior, the hesitation, the questions that feel rehearsed, and it nearly breaks him. Nights bring nightmares of empty houses and locked doors. He wakes exhausted, his body carrying the weight his voice refuses to release. Silence becomes both his shield and his burden. The pressure builds in small, relentless ways. Laura accuses Ethan of not trying, of emotionally abandoning the marriage. During a family outing, she laughs too loudly, then snaps at him when he doesn't match her energy. In the car afterward, she demands to know who he's talking to, what he's hiding. Ethan almost breaks when Claire reaches for him and then hesitates, glancing at Laura first. That moment sends him spiraling into therapy, into journaling at dawn while the house sleeps. On paper, he relearns his own voice, what he feels, what he knows, what he refuses to surrender. The process doesn't erase the pain, but it grounds him. Each session strengthens his resolve. Meanwhile, his quiet documentation continues. Screenshots, bank statements, location logs. Patterns emerge. Laura isn't just careless anymore, she's reckless. The lies get sloppier. The gaps grow wider. And Ethan begins to sense a dangerous confidence forming beneath her behavior. As weeks pass, Laura's mask slips further. She mentions divorce casually, like a hypothetical she's already resolved. She asks pointed questions about finances, suggests moving money to simplify things. Ethan listens without reacting, his calm fueling her certainty. In her mind, he's already lost, too passive to fight, too attached to leave. Melissa reinforces it, telling her men like Ethan never see it coming. Evidence continues to pile up, but more importantly, Laura's belief solidifies. She behaves like someone who's already won. Ethan recognizes the danger in that confidence. People who think they're safe make mistakes. Sitting alone one evening, reviewing files and notes, Ethan understands the true shift. This isn't just about surviving betrayal anymore. It's about protecting his child, his future, and the last piece of himself that still believes in truth. Laura thinks the war is over before it's begun. Ethan knows better. And for the first time, he feels something new rise above the fear: clarity. The family gathering unfolds exactly the way Laura planned. Warm lights, polite laughter, familiar faces gathered around the dining table. She intends to announce the separation gently, framing herself as the patient wife who tried everything. Ethan arrives calm, composed in a way that unsettles her. He doesn't linger by the door or search for approval. Instead, he asks for everyone's attention before the first toast. His voice is steady as he speaks, outlining a timeline no one expects: dates, late nights, trips that never happened. The room stills. Laura laughs nervously, denying it, insisting Ethan is confused, emotional, unstable. But Ethan doesn't argue. He produces proof with deliberate care: screenshots, financial records, messages synced across devices. Each piece lands quietly but heavily. The shock ripples through the room. This isn't a meltdown. It's a dismantling. Laura realizes too late that the stage she built for control has become a courtroom, and Ethan is ready. Melissa stands abruptly, trying to redirect the conversation, insisting private matters shouldn't be discussed publicly. Ethan turns to her, his gaze steady, and reveals her role: messages encouraging the affair, advice about hiding money, mocking texts about Ethan's loyalty. The air drains from Laura's face. She moves from denial to rage in seconds, accusing Ethan of betrayal, invasion, cruelty. Tears follow, then blame-shifting. You weren't there. You made me lonely. Her voice cracks, her hands shake, and the composed image she curated fractures in front of everyone who believed it. Ethan listens without interruption, emotion flickering but controlled. When she finishes, he speaks softly, not to wound but to close the door. I didn't lose you, he says. I survived you. The words land with finality. Laura understands then. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about losing the narrative she thought she owned. Claire is already safe, waiting with Ethan's sister across town, unaware of the wreckage unfolding. That knowledge steadies him as the room dissolves into murmurs and judgment. Laura looks around, searching for allies, but finds only distance. Control is gone. The story she planned to tell has been replaced by truth. Ethan gathers his things quietly. No grand exit, no victory speech. As he walks toward the door, he feels the weight he's been carrying finally loosen. This is the first step of a different life, one built on clarity instead of sacrifice. He steps outside into the cool night air, the sound of the door closing behind him clean and decisive. For the first time in years, Ethan isn't bracing himself for loss. He's standing in the aftermath of survival. And as he walks away, unbroken, he understands something profound. The end of the marriage is not his failure, it's his release. The legal aftermath unfolds slowly, without spectacle. Ethan doesn't chase punishment. He pursues stability. Custody arrangements are fair and structured, centered on Claire's well-being, not revenge. Financially, the documentation he gathered protects him. Assets divided cleanly, hidden transfers reversed, the future no longer hanging by a thread. Laura's world narrows as consequences surface. Her professional image suffers when whispers become confirmed patterns, and colleagues distance themselves. Friends who once rallied around her fade when the truth proves inconvenient. Ethan watches none of this with satisfaction. His focus is forward. Mornings become predictable again. School drop-offs, quiet breakfasts, planning weeks instead of surviving days. Justice, he learns, isn't loud. It's functional. It's the relief of knowing the ground beneath you won't collapse anymore. The chaos that defined his life gives way to order, and in that order, Ethan finds the first real sense of peace he's felt in years. With the battle behind him, Ethan turns inward to rebuild what he neglected while surviving. He establishes new routines, early runs that clear his head, cooking meals instead of skipping them, sleeping through the night without jolting awake. His health improves, but more importantly, his sense of purpose returns. Time with Claire deepens into something richer and steadier. He listens without distraction, shows up without tension, and becomes a presence she can rely on without question. Weekends are filled with small rituals, library visits, shared jokes, quiet conversations that don't need fixing. Ethan doesn't speak often about growth, he lives it. Therapy continues, not as crisis management, but as maintenance. The man who wants to find himself by sacrifice now defines himself by balance. He isn't trying to prove anything. He's building a life that doesn't require endurance to exist, and that, for the first time, feels like freedom. The closure conversation comes months later, unplanned. Laura asks to meet, her confidence replaced by exhaustion. She wants absolution, a clean emotional ending to ease her guilt. Ethan listens, calm and attentive, but unmoved. He tells her he doesn't hate her. Hatred would mean she still controls something inside him. But forgiveness, he explains, isn't something he owes. He's already forgiven the person who mattered most, himself, for staying too long, for confusing endurance with love. He leaves the conversation without anger, without reconciliation, and without regret. The growth is visible not in words, but in what follows. Ethan goes home, helps Claire with her homework, prepares dinner, and plans for tomorrow. Life continues, steadier, quieter, real. He no longer measures healing by how little something hurts, but by how fully he can live without it. And that is the truest ending he could claim. 1 year later, the room feels lighter than the ones Ethan used to survive in. It's a small gathering, nothing formal, just quiet conversation, familiar faces, soft music playing low. Ethan stands near the window, holding a drink he hasn't touched, listening more than he speaks. His posture is different now. His shoulders are relaxed. There's no tension bracing him for the next emotional blow. He smiles easily, not to perform, but because it comes naturally. People notice the change without naming it. He's no longer scanning the room for danger or approval. He's present. When laughter breaks out, he joins it without hesitation. The past still exists, but it doesn't sit on his chest anymore. This isn't happiness born from victory. It's the steadiness that comes from acceptance. Ethan didn't rebuild himself to prove he was right. He rebuilt himself because he deserved peace. Someone asks the question gently, almost carefully, as if stepping around old glass. Do you hate her? The room doesn't go silent, but Ethan feels the weight of the moment. He considers it, not with bitterness, but with clarity. For a long time, hatred felt like it might be necessary, like fuel to keep moving. Now, it feels unnecessary. He shakes his head slightly and says no. He explains, simply, that he finally understands her, not her excuses, but her limitations. The fear that drove her. The need for control. The emptiness she tried to fill by breaking someone who loved her. Understanding doesn't excuse what she did, but it frees him from carrying it. As he speaks, there's no tremor in his voice. No anger hiding beneath the calm. The people listening realize this isn't forgiveness. It's release. And it belongs entirely to him. Later, Ethan steps out into the city evening alone. Streetlights glow, traffic hums, life moving forward without ceremony. He walks with an easy rhythm, hands in his pockets, breathing in the cool air. There's no soundtrack swelling, no sense of conquest. Just quiet completion. He isn't defined by what he survived anymore. He's defined by what he chose to become after. As he disappears into the flow of the city, the truth settles fully into place, not as a lesson, but as a knowing. Some betrayals don't break you. They strip away the version of you that was built on fear and endurance, and return you to the self that existed before compromise. Ethan doesn't look back at the past. He doesn't need to. He's whole. And that wholeness, earned slowly and honestly, lingers far longer than pain ever could.